This is the
Five Stars
podcast.
Let me talk to you.
Hi.
So, what do you guys want to talk about? Tell me when I'm telling lies.
Thanks, guys. Back to you.
It felt so good to wake up this morning and get to write off in my journal. Off as in, I actually have a full day off for the first time in a while. I think the last day I wrote off was back in January. There was probably a day where it was snowing badly and I just said, absolutely not. Not driving in that crap. Today, though, is an actual holiday break, which it is technically post-Easter now. All that church pandemonium is done for the time being. The worst by far was Easter Vigil. An 8 p.m. service call that literally went 2 hours, half of which was in pitch black. You can imagine how fun reading music was in that environment. And it wasn't even the length of the service that made me mad. It was the freaking baptisms and confirmation recognitions that I was like, oh, come on. Seriously, we're doing those? It truly was the marathon service. I'm not young anymore, man. My body cannot withstand super long services like that. I get antsy. But I got through it all. Now I get to come here on an actual Monday morning and do a proper Monday podcast for the first time in God knows how long. Some people might not even know how I came to settle on the Monday and Friday podcast when I started all this up. No, back when I was still living and working in Pittsburgh, Monday mornings and early afternoons were typically off days for me. And Fridays were also off days, pretty much all day. So I actually carved out those blocks on Mondays and Fridays to record, edit, and upload the shows at that time. And it usually worked, no problem. And then as things started to become more hectic, I just started breaking up the recording sessions on different days, piece everything together last minute, and well, now you see the position I'm in now. This has become the epitome of a hobby podcast. Whatever you think of it, whether you think it's silly that I'm using the old iMovie format to do these shows on a 2015 MacBook Pro that is still running after 11 years, I think. It's free, it's easy, and even better, I know how to use it. And so now that you know the chronicle of the podcast, let's do said podcast and talk about some retro raw here on the Monday show. By the way, make sure you subscribe and comment, leave a like here. We are on YouTube and Rumble on Mondays and Fridays to bring you classic wrestling coverage on YouTube and Rumble. On that note, while I'm thinking of it, because of the hectic nature of this weekend, the fact that I had bookings Saturday morning, Saturday evening, and Sunday morning, I did not have time to watch WCW or Mid-South in preparation for the Friday show. And while I could hypothetically cram those in today when I don't have to be anywhere, I've also got other things I need to do. Moreover, things that I would like to do, such as finish reading the Rags, Paper, and Pins collection book that Jim Cornette and Mark James wrote on Memphis. A book that I started back in like January and am yet to actually finish reading cover to cover, even though the whole thing's like 300 pages thereabout, and half of it is just pictures. Plus, I also want to go work out and maybe try to clean up the apartment a little bit. I don't usually have a lot of energy to do a full house cleaning because I'm so damn exhausted all the time. But I need to take care of some of that. So, no Friday podcast this week. But you're getting one today, so appreciate it. Or don't, I don't care. Whatever floats your boat, as my grandma once said. Alright, so what are we doing? Raw? Good. Let's do it. And I've got a tragic story to kickstart this review. I've been watching the majority of these classic Raws through a third-party video platform, mainly because they are yet to upload all the classic Raws to Netflix, which is a whole other discussion that I don't want to get into right now. And I'm honestly surprised that the pirated Raws have remained up for as long as they have. I mean, this guy literally archived every Raw from like 93 up through, I think the playlist ended somewhere in mid-98. I don't know what happened. I guess someone finally flagged the channel and took it down. So all those Raws have since been deleted in the last week, which means I'm basically in a situation where I have to either hope that there's another site that illegally uploads the show so I can access the full content, or I just have to hope it's on Netflix. It's mind-boggling to think that they're charging the prices they are for access to all that content, yet they still have not uploaded all the classic Raw footage yet. Quite frankly, I don't know if those Raws will ever make it to Netflix or not. So, I'm going to try to play this by ear over the next few weeks and see how things go. I don't want to just drop the review series because there's no way to access the full library. I guess if worse comes to worse, I can try and find clips on YouTube of full segments and maybe hope there's a way to still do a full-length review of the 2-hour shows. But that's going to involve a lot of extra work on my part, which, again, I really don't have time for. So just be aware of that over the next month. Accessing the Raw shows is going to be a challenge. Unless someone else jumps on the bandwagon and starts uploading stuff illegally. Now, luckily, I did find a third-party website that had the full Raw for this week. Quality was a bit sus, but at least I could watch the full show in its entirety. So I lucked out. But let's go ahead and get into this one. They open with a tag match. It's Owen Hart and the British Bulldog versus the Godwins. And before I very succinctly recap that completely pointless match, let's address a couple things. Now, you'll remember last week, they opened Raw with a European title match between Owen Hart and the British Bulldog. But then after Bret came down and recruited them to be a part of Team Canada, they had pretty much blown off the ongoing feud between Owen and Davey right there. They went from bitter rivals to best friends in about 2 minutes. So now they're out here 1 week later on the same page with absolutely no issues. Even though prior to this match, they can never get through a single tag match without miscommunication. But here, perfectly fine. I also can't neglect Owen's epic promo before the match started, where I wanted to take a shot every time he mentioned Brother Bret. Probably would have had liver failure by the end of the promo. But he took a minute to call out the fans and put over that the Hart family is one big happy family again. He also called out Shawn and directly told him, "You better not say anything bad about Brother Bret when you come out later tonight." Hedge your bets on how that went. And so we eventually get this incredibly crappy match. It's another chapter in the book of how in the fuck are the Godwins still an active tag team on this roster? I guess it's because Henry Godwin didn't get hurt yet. Which, for those of you that don't know, you'll know soon enough. There was a spot here where Phineas got body slammed right on top of Owen's face. I'm sure that had to have been lovely. Having 300 pounds of ass and hamstring slammed on your face. And so the heels worked over Phineas through a commercial break. There were multiple spots here where Henry Godwin was flipping out and... I hate to use the term acting when I refer to something in wrestling, but he was acting more heelish at certain points, which... Christ, if I remember whether the fucking Hog Farmers ever turned heel. But Henry ended up getting the hot tag to make the comeback. And then right in the middle of the supposed babyface comeback, while they're beating up the tag team champions, they choose that moment to go to a split screen where Hawk and Animal plug the pay-per-view match on the 20th. At which point, during the split screen interview, when everybody's attention is averted from what's going on in the ring, somehow Owen and Davey end up stealing the pinfall on the Hog Farmers. So that was poor timing on the agent's part. Also poor was the post-match where the Hog Farmers and the Road Warriors tried to sandwich Owen and Davey on the rampway, only for Henry to accidentally toss the bucket of slop onto the Road Warriors. So then those teams got into a brawl while Owen and Davey stood at the top of the ramp and laughed at them, which I'll admit was kind of funny. But yes, they are teasing the Road Warriors versus the Hog Farmers, which, by that logic, that would have to insinuate that the Road Warriors are winning the belts at the pay-per-view, right? See, the thing is, I remember the feud between the Hog Farmers and the Legion of Doom because of what happens to Henry Godwin. I have absolutely no idea whether that was ever for the belts or not. But that appears to be the direction they're going. Because that's a feud we're all just dying to see. Hawk and Animal versus Phineas and Henry Godwin. That'll turn those ratings around in a heartbeat. I did love Owen and Davey watching the footage back after the break and continuing to have a laugh at the babyface's expense. Owen had a great line where he's talking about how We don't do stuff like that in Canada because in Canada, we're civilized. Yeah. I don't even give a fuck that Owen's supposed to be a heel. The idea that a Canadian is going to make fun of the way we act here in the United States. How's your economy doing? How's your mass import of immigration working out? The fact that your previous prime minister ran your country into the ground economically, and yet you still voted for a candidate that ran on the same party ticket in your last election. That tells you everything you need to know right there. What's that line from Whiplash? You try to give a calculator to a retard, he's going to try to turn on the TV with it. It's moments like that where I think, voter ID might not be such a bad idea. Anyway, getting back to the show here. We had Stone Cold E.T. versus Billy Gunn. Sorry, I know. Old meme. Steve Austin versus Honky Tonk Man's newest acquisition. After his failed recruitment of Jesse James the other week, he has now recruited Billy Gunn. And so you're probably thinking to yourself, well, that must signify something good for Billy's future, right? Pairing him with Honky? Ideally, that means he should be getting some kind of push now, right? Well, it is a push of some description. They're pushing him deeper into the pit of despair. No, Austin pretty much obliterated him and made him look like the world's biggest dork. Even when he was working Billy over for the so-called heat, the crowd was still chanting for Austin. The highlight is when Austin went to kick Billy in the balls right in front of Tim White, and after Tim went to admonish him and go to check on Billy, Austin flipped Tim the bird behind his back, which the crowd popped for. Then Austin went over with a stunner like a minute later, which led to Honky getting in the ring afterward to, I guess, console Billy over his loss to Austin. And I got to admit, even though Honky's got total go-away heat with me at this point, he actually did a fair, reasonably good pep talk promo. Told Billy that there's no shame in losing to a guy of Austin's caliber. He's on a level above most everybody on the roster right now. And Billy can reach those heights too. He's young, he's dedicated, he's in great shape. Boy, Honky should have seen him about 15 years later. If he thought Billy was in good shape in 1997, Jesus. That dude got shredded. But here's the part that caught me off guard in this whole promo segment. Honky then tries to recruit Billy again, which I thought he already did. Considering that they came out together during Billy's entrance, hadn't they already established that they were together? Well, turns out that was not the case. Because Billy then cold-cocked Honky and sucker punched him right in the jaw. And of course, I remember where they go with Billy Gunn next. He hadn't fully become Rockabilly yet. But I absolutely do not remember him leveling the honky tonk man. Unless... Am I just misremembering how this all went down? They feuded Billy and Road Dogg before they put them together in a tag team, correct? Am I just an idiot? Did Honky not manage Billy Gunn for a short period of time? Or is this supposed to be one of those pointless Russo swerves where we think that Billy denied Honky's offer, only for them to eventually reveal that they were in cahoots the whole time? I don't fucking remember how any of this garbage played out. Nor does it really matter, but I don't know. The whole thing didn't make any sense. And it was still a shitty program. Speaking of shitty, and also things that I completely forgot about until now, y'all remember the Truth Commission? Yeah, neither do most people. You know, this was one of those promos where I sat there and impassively listened to what was going on. By the time it was over, I had absolutely no idea, A, what the fuck the Commandant was talking about here, and B, how the fuck it pertained to anything in the Bret Hart pre-tape they aired afterward. Beyond that, they apparently did a live event in South Africa, and I guess Bret Hart is now an ally because he's anti-anything America. Here's what I sort of remember about the Truth Commission in the WWF. They were a... God, I don't even know if I can say this on YouTube without getting some kind of shadow ban just for using the word. They were a predominantly white nationalist heel stable from South Africa. Now, of course, the irony to all of that is, one, nobody in this faction was from fucking South Africa. And two, apparently nobody thought it would be a wise decision to at least attempt to have these guys speak with South African accents. Apparently they thought that South African accents were on the same par as Russian accents. Because that is essentially how the Commandant spoke here. He may as well have been a distant relative of Ivan Koloff. So, the one guy that came out here, I don't even remember if he wrestled anywhere else, but I believe he was the so-called leader of the group. The one that went by the Commandant. And his partner, the Interrogator, I don't remember much, if anything, about him. But I think they were the two primary guys in the group before they brought along other members later on. One of whom I remember was Don Callis. But of course he wrestled with a gimmick name, and I'm not even going to lie and pretend like I have a clue what it was. This truly is one of those flash-in-the-pan type of gimmicks that only hardcore WWF fans from the late 90s would probably remember offhand. It's like, ask me if I remember anything about the group. I will tell you, it sounds familiar. Ask me to recall anything about them storyline related. Fuck no. The funny part about it, the entire setup here seemed to be all about establishing that Bret Hart was aligned with the group. But I don't think Bret ever actually did anything with the Truth Commission. Oh, actually, I just had a revelation. I do remember Don Callis' name. He was the Jackal. The only reason I know that is because he ends up becoming the manager for the group later on. After like several months of the group not doing anything constructive and nobody actually ever getting over for being a part of it. Which never changed, by the way. Everybody that was involved in this faction pretty much floundered. And like I said, I have no idea how Bret fit in with any of this. They shot the promo with the Commandant. He pitched to a video of Bret waving the South African flag for a house show they did. They showed Shawn watching on a monitor. Then they came back and moved on with the rest of the show. I got nothing, dude. I legitimately have no other thoughts about this beyond anything I just mentioned about the group. It is kind of bizarre. Like, you think about the fact that they're already doing a sort of supremacy black power storyline with the Nation of Domination. Why did they think they needed another one of those supremacy groups, but just doing it with white guys instead? And it's not like they ever feuded. As far as I know, I don't think these groups ever crossed paths. They had black versus white supremacy storylines going on in the late 90s at the same time. Yet, nobody ever got the idea to have the factions feud with one another. Imagine that. So let's move on with the top of the hour segment. The Shawn Michaels promo. There was a lot to digest here. In reality, probably too much to digest for one podcast discussion. Kind of depends on how deep you want to get in with breaking everything down. But it's always good to start from the top and work down, so let's do that. So Vince brings out Shawn for an interview. And the subject matter of the conversation, mind you, began with Vince trying to get Shawn's input on what happened on TV a couple weeks ago when Bret attacked Shawn after the angle with Rocky Maivia. They sort of began by talking about that incident. Then it quickly devolved into Shawn doing one of those droning monologues where he said a bunch of shit about Bret that had Bret actually been there in person, he probably would have kicked the living crap out of Shawn for a shoot. But here's basically the gist of what Shawn talked about. He talked about the idea that Bret's new heel turn is really just an extension of the kind of man he is when the camera's not rolling. Talked about the deep-rooted hatred that they both share with each other, which that I'll at least concede was truthful. Most of what Shawn talked about here was him just flat out lying to the camera, but there were a couple nuggets of truth that he dropped. He said that he doesn't like Bret in the same way that Bret doesn't like him. It's a mutual hatred because they both don't share the same views on wrestling. Kept bringing up Bret's obsession with the WWF Championship, how he can't stand the idea of not being the top guy in the company. For Shawn, it's always been about the love of the sport. For Bret, it's always been about trying to prove something to his family. Mentioned the whole thing about him playing second fiddle to Bret for the last 6 years, and how when the tables were finally turned, and it was Bret's turn to finally let Shawn take center stage, he couldn't handle it. And this was the part where I just couldn't help but let out the world's biggest belly laugh, because this fucking statement that Shawn made here, oh my God, this pissed me off. He said that Bret took time away from the WWF because he wanted to see just how bad things would get with Shawn being the champion. And as it turns out, and again, this is according to Shawn, when he was the WWF champion last year, things were great. Business, he said, was the best it's ever been. Oh, really, Shawn? Is that true now? Well then, I would love for you to explain how it would then be the case that when you were the World Wrestling Federation champion in 1996, the company did one of the worst periods of business it had ever done. Record low TV ratings, record low house show business, record low gate numbers, record low pay-per-view buys. Like, who in the fuck are you trying to kid? We reviewed your time as WWF champion. It was not a good year, dude. Your title reign flopped so badly that people were collectively cheering for a heel Sycho Sid in MSG. It was so bad that the majority of the Prime demo was outright booing your ass in every major venue. Who the fuck are you to try to say business was great when you were on top as champion? If anything, you validated Bret Hart's prediction that you would end up failing as a champion and business would end up doing poorly with you on top. And the prophecy came true. Look what the fuck happened. I can't believe he actually tried to make people buy that BS. And see, the part that we're not even talking about here is the fact that people are still booing Shawn in this segment. He is supposed to be the babyface in this feud with Bret. After they already went out of their way to turn Bret heel, officially, they still can't get people to rally behind Shawn. Because everybody knows how forced and played out this whole thing is. He says that Bret's in this for the money and nothing else. I will say, again, a lot of what Shawn said here was just complete and utter bullshit. But he did have a couple of moments where he spoke the truth. Probably the line that stood out the most, beyond him just blatantly lying about how business thrived with him as champion. When he told Bret that his obsession with the title would be his ultimate downfall. Again, dude. More foreshadowing for the Montreal finish. Y'all can state the claim that it was 100% shoot. Still ain't buying it. Nope. Too many tidbits of storyline seeds being planted. I'm too smart. I saw that dramatic close-up when Shawn delivered that line. I can see through their bullshit. They're not working me. And he said some other stuff here that I kind of glazed over. The punchline was him teasing a strip down before Owen and Davey came out to confront him. I'm not making that up. Shawn literally started to take his clothes off on live TV before the heels came down. So in hindsight, thank God for Owen and Davey. They spared us the sight of having to see Shawn's happy trail. Again, so much content here that I could spend hours and hours ranting about. Do they just not get it? They literally cannot see past the smell of their own wet farts. The fact that they're trying to present Shawn as the pro-American hero in all of this, beyond the fact that it's utter contrived bullshit, how do they not see that nobody's buying it? Like, Shawn's out there blatantly lying to everybody and saying that Bret's only in this for financial gain. How Shawn's the one that does this because he loves wrestling and wants to do proper business. Right. Kind of like how you did proper business when you forfeited the belt before Mania because you didn't want to lay down and do the honors for Bret. Get the fuck out of here. And take your stupid ass sissy purple hair tie with you. Prick. So on that lovely note, now that I'm hot and pissed off, probably not the best time to be segueing into a headbangers match, is it? This did certainly not help in bringing down my escalated anger. They had a horrible fucking match with Barry Horowitz and Tracy Smothers. Horrible. Again, I repeat, horrible. The crowd may as well have been on a collective piss break during this match. It was so quiet. They beat up on Horowitz through most of it until Smothers made a short comeback, only to get cut off and then put away with the always botched, always fucked up Headbangers Powerbomb leg drop combo. It's been, I don't know, 6 or 7 matches we've reviewed with the Headbangers doing this finish. Still haven't fucking hit it. One would think maybe we should change our finish to something more easily attainable. Or, we could just do the same sloppy finish we've been doing. Yeah, this sucked. Also, what sucked, Ken Shamrock's MMA exhibition match with Vernon Deaton. Or Vernon White, not Vernon Deaton. Wasn't Vernon Deaton an NWA jobber? So this is one of those early brainchild ideas that sparked the interest for them doing the Brawl for All concept. Also a horrible gimmick idea for reasons that have been documented throughout time. Didn't they do an episode on the Dark Side of the Ring covering the Brawl for All series? And the disaster that was? Well, this was a disaster for the simple reason that it didn't connect with the crowd. It was also terrible. And it's like, I hate to shit on the idea of trying to incorporate mixed martial arts into pro wrestling because when done properly, it's actually a really cool visual. But just doing straight up MMA style matches in pro wrestling, it's never worked. It's always fallen flat. And in terms of them trying to get over Shamrock, it was highly more effective with him just doing the standoff with Vader after the match. And that had virtually nothing to do with the MMA element. That was just straight up presenting Shamrock as a loose cannon beast that stood his ground and didn't back away from a guy bigger than him. That part was fine. The shoot fight beforehand, that I could have done without. Also could have done without Vader beating up Frank Stallone, or whatever the job guy's name was. The only thing I took away from this segment was them mentioning that Sid was apparently scheduled to face Mankind on the show, but Sid no-showed and didn't arrive to the building that day. Or as Gorilla Monsoon stated in his promo, potentially got into an auto accident. But you see, that's trivial matter. The show must go on. Sid could be bleeding out on the side of the road with the car flipped over, engulfed in flames. But damn it all, we need a TV main event. Fuck Sid's health. So he gave Sid an ultimatum. He can either show up and work the match as planned, or he forfeits the match and his opportunity to qualify for the WWF title at the pay-per-view. Which, I guess it was being implied that the pay-per-view match was initially supposed to be Bret versus Sid. And who does he forfeit that right to? Stone Cold Steve Austin, baby. So Steve interjects to tell Monsoon that if he gives him the number one contender spot at the pay-per-view to wrestle Bret, he'll go out and wrestle Mankind in the main event. And apparently that's all it took for Austin to get his demands met. Just straight up looked his boss in the eye, threatened him with violence if he didn't meet his demands. And hey, he got what he wanted. Could you imagine if that's how the real world worked? I do love the idea that Austin just so happened to be standing 5 feet away when Monsoon declared that he would be subbing for Sid in the case that he didn't show up for the main event. Just saying. And so we arrive at the TV main event. No surprise. Sid did not show up. I'm pretty sure this is the classic story that I've heard Jim mention over the years, where Sid faked a heart attack so that he could leave the building. And of course, that signified the end of Sid's run in the WWF. I think Vince threatened to withhold his pay until he came back, which, well, again, that never happened. So this officially marks the end of Sid's WWF run, which is both sad and, for others, probably a relief. For me, it was a bummer because I was such a huge Sid mark. Oh, by the way, props to the WWE for finally inducting him into the Hall of Fame class this year. Long overdue. Not that the Hall of Fame means anything. At least, not the WWE version. Also, probably should talk a little bit about Mankind's interview before the match. I'll spare you the grim details of fire and whatever the hell Mankind was referencing about his 3-year-old daughter. It is hilarious that they actually brought up Foley's kid for this fucking interview. As if there was any purpose to even hint at the idea that Mankind would be married with kids. The guy that lives in a boiler room. But he vowed that he would win the title, and make The Undertaker his twin by having him wear a Mankind mask for the rest of his life. And then Taker's music hit while they dimmed the arena lights. Cut a promo about eternal damnation, so that Paul would feel the wrath for what he did to him the other week. It was about what I expected. You can definitely tell, even during this period, Taker hadn't fully fleshed out the Undertaker voice. And let's be honest, I mean, he didn't really get a chance to cut many promos prior to 1996. He was mostly a mute when Paul was still managing him. So while he was still trying to be the Undertaker in character, you could still hear a lot of unfiltered Texas accent. But we know what it's all leading to. When they actually do the fireball angle with Paul, that I don't directly remember offhand. It's probably at the pay-per-view. But we'll see. As far as Mankind versus Austin goes, they began with a jump start in the aisleway, wherein Mankind took a back body drop on the steel ramp about 30 seconds into the match. It was also at this point where a fucking stink bug decided to drop from my ceiling and land right on my laptop as I was typing. You can imagine how much of a traumatic experience that was. Fuckers. I still can't believe those things are around. And that's the second one that's found its way into my apartment. So while Austin was working over Mankind, Owen and Bulldog ran a distraction from up in the nosebleeds, which obviously ties in with Steve still having a score to settle with Bret at the pay-per-view in a few weeks. So they brought out Owen and Davey to try to stir up trouble. And that allowed for Mankind to take over during the break and work over Austin for a bit. We had Mankind exposing the concrete padding on the floor, which led to, well, nothing, as it turned out. It led to them brawling up the ramp so Austin could shove Mankind headfirst into the guardrail, which looked unpleasant. And as both men were down selling in the ring, Davey and Owen started coming through the crowd, which led to the Road Warriors intercepting them at the pass to prevent interference. But they didn't prevent interference from Vader, who just casually made his way past everybody so he could get in the ring and proceed to accidentally take out his tag partner. And so that led to Vader and Mankind throwing soup bones back and forth while Austin chased after the Hart Foundation, leading to the lasting visual of Mankind and Vader facing off while Paul Bearer tried to play peacemaker. Yes, they are still a tag team, if you already forgot about that. And that all happened in about 45 seconds. The final 45 seconds of airtime. Too much Crash TV, man. Way too much crap to keep track of. At least for me. But here's what we do know in terms of pay-per-view hype. There is the tag title match with the Road Warriors and the Hart Foundation. We got Taker versus Mankind for the title. And what was originally supposed to be Bret versus Sid for the number one contender spot, it is now Bret versus Austin 3. All things considered, not a bad card on paper. The question is, how good were any of those matches when you take into account booking and angles and the things that typically got in the way of good wrestling during the late 90s. All in all, the show wasn't a complete bust. Hour 2 definitely sucked more than Hour 1. But they are generally focusing more on trying to keep the main event picture hot. The lower card stuff, it is what it is. It's quintessential bad WWF gimmicks. But that's sort of the way the WWF got away with so much of the bad booking in the late 90s. It was sort of the reverse psychology with the way WCW booked. With WWF, they always had a hot main event picture that was really strong, and it usually made up for what turned out to be lousy or bad undercards. And with WCW, it was the polar opposite. Like, you watch a pay-per-view and you're like, man, everything was good up until the main event, but boy howdy, that Hogan match, did that underdeliver? Then, of course, you're left with thinking the entire pay-per-view was terrible because the main event was so bad. But this will probably be a reflection on how the In Your House pay-per-view goes. The undercard will probably suck, as it typically did. And then we'll have Taker and Mankind for the title, which will probably be good. Austin versus Bret. While I have zero recollection of ever seeing that match, if it's anything like the first two, probably will be good. One could hope. But anyway, that'll do it for now. Thanks everybody for checking out the show. And we will be back next Monday for more Retro Raw madness. And hopefully I can find some way to get access to the full show. I also didn't check to see if it was on Netflix or not. It might actually be up there. We will see. Until then, thanks all for watching. Remember, no Friday show this week. And I will catch you all soon. Take care, everybody. Peace out.